Okay, so I've been making some upgrades to the camera over the last couple weeks. Took a lot longer than I was hoping just because I ran into a lot of problems with it, but I finally got it working. So what I was trying to do is, because this is a tile-based game, what you want to do is draw the minimum amount of tiles possible at any given time. So you figure out where the camera is looking and then do some math to determine how many tiles need to be drawn. So that way you could have like a really big map with 1,000,000 tiles on it, but you're not actually moving around the whole million, like drawing the whole million and moving them around. You're just drawing what's actually on the camera. So right now I just subtracted one from each side just to show that it's easier to see that it's actually working. So when I zoom in or zoom out or move around or like move the actual player or move the camera, like if I'm at the side, if I move the player when I'm at the side or if I move the camera when I'm in the center, it'll always figure out which tiles should be on screen and which ones shouldn't. So here I'll turn it back to the way it normally would be. So now this is how it would normally be, where I'm not subtracting one from each side anymore. Now I'm just drawing what's actually needed on screen. So like from the user point of view, you don't notice any difference. It seems like I'm not adding and removing stuff, but in reality, see here, like my mouse disappears now, but at the bottom, at the top, there's like that half opacity black. That indicates which is actually off screen. So the player doesn't see it happening, but stuff slowly gets added on and off screen. So yeah, in general, that's actually not that hard to do, but because of the parallax and because of some other complications, like the way my pivot system works, it gets pretty tricky actually, for me anyway. But since like almost every tile-based game has this, I wasn't expecting it to be that hard, but it really was quite tricky to get it all working. So like for example, right now, it might look like at the top here, I'm drawing an extra tile, but in reality, I'm not drawing an extra tile there because here on the bottom right, I'm outputting the current parallax offset of the background. So you can see like, because the background moves at a different, like it moves the background with the foreground and then offsets it a bit. So if I move down 100, it moves it up like 10 or something like that, depending on like, right now I'm offsetting at 0.2. So this is telling me how much has been offset. So the reason why, like, the background only, the offset only changes when the camera's moving. So like right now, it's staying 0, 62.9, 62.69 because the camera's not moving. And then when the camera moves, the offset changes. But the thing is, the further you are zoomed in, like as I start to zoom in now, the camera will, if I go back to the top now, the camera takes a longer time to stop moving because it's zoomed in. So if I zoomed out to show the whole map, the background wouldn't offset at all because the camera wouldn't be moving at all. But when you zoom in really far, it changes, like the amount of offset you have when you reach the edge is now different. So like right now I'm at the top and the offset is 45.69. But if I were to then zoom out and then move to the top, you have negative 62.56. So that's why it kind of looks like there's an extra tile drawn at the top, because you might expect that the offset would be 0. But that's just one of the complications of having a parallax background, is you never know, you can never assume a certain amount of tiles are there in total. in some cases, like you'd have to know. It's kind of hard to explain, but it makes things more complicated. But the important thing is that everything that actually needs to be drawn is drawn, and everything that doesn't need to be drawn isn't drawn. Why is the offset? Oh, I pressed the. Okay. So yeah, like just getting it to work precisely like this in all scenarios is actually pretty tricky if you've never done it before. And like the player. If the player were to start on the right side of the screen, like I'll show. So say I'll start at like 45, 20. So that'll be like the right side of the screen. And then like in the middle. So now it's started here. So the current parallax offset is 0, 0. So now, oh, and also, I'm assuming the zoom is at 1 when I'm at the right side, so that's why that the camera changed like that. In the real game, it would always move smoothly. But anyway, so now when I move to the right side, the offset's 889, and whereas if I were to start at or when I move to the left side, if I was to start at the left side, the offset would now be 0. So that can basically just cause complications where you have to draw negative tiles sometimes, or you have to draw like extra tiles. Because you can never assume certain things that would be convenient to assume. Whereas with the foreground tiles, I always know exactly how many tiles there are to draw. When I move to the right, I know which tile there's gonna for sure be, and when I move to the left, I know. But with the parallax, it's more complicated than that. So yeah, and like, I guess I'll also show with like some different parallax values, like right, this is where I define the parallax amount for the background. So if it's 0, that means that it won't move at an offset at all. So now the background moves exactly the same as the foreground. There's no parallax effect. But even without the parallax effect, it figures out how many tiles to draw perfectly. And then say I'll do like 0.8 and start back at the other side of the screen. So now with a 0.8 offset, if it's at a 1, it won't move at all. So at a 0.8, it's only barely moving. So it's like the background's really far away. But it'll always know which ones to draw, which ones not to draw. Yeah, so anyway, so like no matter what the zoom is, what the starting position is, where the camera moves to, or what the offset is, it'll always work, which is pretty nice. And like the main benefit now is here's like the rudimentary way I'm designing the maps, which later I'll fix. I'll add like a map editor. But this is like, you know, probably a few thousand tiles right now. So if I were to be drawing them all every frame and then moving them, like you're not gonna add them to the screen every frame, but if I were moving them around if I drew them all to start with and then I moved all of them around every time the camera moved, it would start to, even, I think with this, it probably wouldn't lag, but if I were to go like this and add like millions more tiles, that would definitely cause lag, a significant amount of lag. Because when you move stuff, you have to redraw it, I guess. And the fewer things you have to redraw, the smoother it'll go. So now that the camera only draws the things that are actually on screen. From what I'm seeing right now, there's 0 lag. It's perfect right now. Even though there are millions and millions of tiles, I see absolutely no lag. You might see lag because I'm also recording the screen and I'm never really able to record in full 60 frames per second. But for me, there's zero lag here, and it's obvious. Like even if I were to like, just sit here. Oh, okay. We got like how many? We have like. Whoa! I froze the IDE. Okay, so now I've got like 7,000 rows of tiles, and like 30 on each row. So if it were drawing everything, it would really, really lag really badly. It wouldn't even be able to run. It would just crash the computer. But for me, it runs totally smoothly. So that's the whole reason. And obviously, like off screen, it's just drawing exactly what you need at any given time. So no matter how far I go, no matter which direction I go, it always runs smoothly. And that's because it's not drawing unnecessary stuff. So I'm going to have to add in like a similar logic to this for like the actual characters and entities in the game. Like if an enemy's moving back and forth, I don't want to just draw them. I don't want to draw like hundreds of enemies at all times. I just want to draw the ones that the camera's close to. So I'll have to have like a kind of a similar, but it'll be like a similar system for figuring out which characters and stuff to draw. But I'm pretty sure this background parallax stuff will be like by far the hardest thing I had to do in terms of the camera. Now that I've got this fixed and working, no matter what I do, it'll be easier than this, because this was actually pretty complicated. And it's mainly just because I hadn't done it before. But I won't explain the code, but I'll just quickly show. Here is the function. Here's the function which determines what the current offset is of the background and like updates it. And I also have to handle the case where it moves from a situation where the camera wasn't moving to a situation where the camera is moving. I can't assume that the background parallax was a full update, because you might be half in one area and half in the other area. So that's why the background parallax code is a little bit more complicated than you might think it would need to be. Because to actually get it perfect, you have to take into account a lot of edge cases. So yeah, that's that code. Then the code to determine the amount of foreground tiles on screen at any time, that's this code. And I could actually simplify this a bit, but it's fine the way it is. And then this was the hardest part. This was to determine the amount of background tiles on screen at any given time. So yeah, that. And then there's also like, this is to actually add and remove the tiles to the screen. So it just loops through. If something, like it'll only call this function if what was visible on camera actually changed. And then it'll look at what was visible now and what was visible last frame. And it'll compare the two and then loop through the tiles that either were visible and now aren't, or both in both cases. And then it'll try to efficiently as possible add and remove tiles to the screen. Because you certainly can't just loop through every tile in the entire map and then check each one individually if they're on screen or not. You have to only check the ones that are possible to have changed. But anyway, so even though this is like kind of simple, for me it was like a big milestone to get this all working and to actually understand, like, because sometimes when you code things, it becomes just a bunch of nonsense. And when you look at it, you're basically just doing trial and error and like randomly trying stuff. Whereas this, I can easily understand exactly why I'm doing everything I'm doing and why it all works. And it wasn't really that easy to figure out like some of this like arithmetic that I'm doing. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So anyway, I'm gonna be able to work on some other stuff now because I've been working on this for almost 2 weeks. I definitely didn't work like full time or anything, but I put in a decent amount of hours on this, and it was like a little bit frustrating to take so long because there's just so many problems I ran into. So to get it all finally working perfectly, I'm pretty happy about that. Anyway, so yeah, we'll see what I do next week. I'm not really sure what I'm gonna do next. I might just get things back to the way they were before, where the player is actually able to jump around and stuff, because I'm still recoding the player. And then I'm kind of tempted to continue working on the slime enemy. But I was also tempted to start doing the overworld, because there's going to be an overworld to the game. But anyway, so yeah, hopefully, I was originally planning on updating once a week, every week. I'm not really sure about that anymore because some weeks I don't have anything to show really, and it's because I was trying to fix something. But yeah, I'll probably just like roughly once or twice a week update. And I'm still trying to pick up the pace, but I used to have more of a problem with like getting hours in, whereas now I'm doing better. But I want to do even better because now I'm not, I'm doing like maybe 50, 60 hours a week, whereas I want to be doing like, like 60 to 80 in order to actually be able to finish the game without it taking too long. But anyway, oh yeah, and when I say like 50, 60, 32 of each week goes to my job because I work 4 days a week full time. I used to work 5 days a week, but I switched my contract to only be a 4-day week. So when I work 50 hours, it's really only like 18 on my game. So when you have like a full-time job, it just makes everything so much slower to actually do stuff. But anyway, so I'll be back next week probably.